Just a city boy, born and raised in South Detroit. You took the midnight train going anywhere. Okay, we are live. So good to see everybody here. Happy Tuesday, September 20th. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. Just to let you guys know that James Faunt, oh, excuse me. The Jaybefaunt Show is available on all major podcast platforms like Anchor, Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, so you can subscribe to me there. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can find me on the JB Show on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can also catch me on RBN Live on Tuesdays at 4 and the Sabby and JB Show on Thursdays at 6. Please make sure, if you have not already, give this video a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, I want you to take that gorgeous appendage of yours and smash down that subscribe button. And if you do, I may promise you cookies or brownies or all of the above if I can give it through the screen. It's the thought counts that, right? So shout out to patrons on Patreon. Shout out to patrons on Coffee. Thank you for all of your support and your love. I am deeply humble and I appreciate your contribution from the top and bottom of my heart. I also like to let you guys know that I want to say a big hello to everybody that's watching on Rockfin, Twitch, the rewatch on Rumble, as well as YouTube. So good to see all of you here. Now, today is a very good day. Like Ice Cube said, today was a good day. I have with me Eddie Liger from Midwestern Marks joining me on my channel. Sir, thank you for joining me on my humble little channel.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back.
All right. It's good to see you here. And you guys at Midwestern Marks are devoted to education, to Marxist education and education to the proletariat. If you can give my viewers a little bit of a synopsis of what Midwestern Marx is, so that they can have more of a purview of what it means and what it is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first and foremost, we're a website. That's what we were founded as. Me and my buddy Carlos, who was my neighbor in college and one of my best buddies, founded the website when we graduated. It was in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, so we had some time and a lot of things that we wanted to talk about. So we originally started publishing articles and adding to our staff of writers and editors. And, we've continued with that, publishing articles now. And now we've got a lot of relationships with really awesome left-wing or socialist publishing outlets like Monthly Review and others. So we can republish articles from them when we think it's worth doing. So Carlos handles a lot of that. But then, of course, we also do video content and, even some podcast audio content. So we've got our YouTube channel, which is approaching, I think, 25,000 subscribers. And then our TikTok, which is at like 75,000. Then we're also on, thank you. Yeah, and then also on Instagram and Twitter and all that, too, where we also publish our stuff. So. But yeah, our main goal is education. There's a quote that I don't know if it's still on the front page of our website, but it was at one point that said, "Theory becomes a there it is. Theory becomes a material force as soon as it is gripped by the masses." So theory is in a more abstract thing. It's produced by academics. It's knowledge, right? You can't hold it necessarily or use it as a weapon. But, if the masses understand theory, then they can use it as a weapon. If the working class starts to understand theory, then they can use it to cooperate, organize, and strategize. And at that point, it becomes a weapon. So that's our goal, is to help the masses grip theory and help theory become a material force. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you so very much for that. Also, just to let everybody know, in the link in the description is also the website to Midwestern Marks. So if you guys are so inclined to visit their website as well, so there it's in there. So it's good, good stuff. So um, one of the first things that and I think we touched on this when I had you on RBN, was yours your I guess your I guess I could say immigration towards this thought, or really not thought. Your immigration towards this enlightenment. Because guess what? I'm a socialist. I'm gonna put it because first of all, to anybody who says anybody who does the news has to be just in the middle and completely objective, nobody who does news is completely objective. Nobody. And if they say they're in the middle and they don't have a bias, they're lying to you. Let's just put that out there. Everybody has a bias in some way, shape, or form. I can particularly have a bias towards the poor, working, and workers. I have my bias towards them. And so I want a system that favors the poor, the people who are the most disenfranchised among us, as well as the workers. So therefore, that's where my bias goes. That being said, as far as what I consider you go is more an enlightenment, not just a move towards a left or right, but more of an enlightenment in this respect. So that's why I use that word, in my my analysis, so to speak. So, but when did this begin? Like, what was that spark that said, "Oh snap, things aren't the way they should be"?
Yeah, there's Carlos has a good word for it in philosophy. I can't remember the word he uses, but it basically means an event which happens onto the subject, and then it changes the way that they think about things and changes the way they think about the world. It's a common thing that philosophers have analyzed. And for me, that was mostly I believe it was 2012 teacher strikes in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
where right wing Republican Koch brothers funded Governor Scott Walker cut the teachers' salaries, busted up their unions, their collective bargaining rights and abilities,
Mm-hmm.
and then said it was to fix Wisconsin's debt. But he turned around and gave a massive corporate subsidy, corporate government handout to Foxconn, this multinational corporation. And today, Wisconsin's debt stands at over $21 billion. So he didn't
Wow.
fix the debt. He cut teacher salaries so he would have more money to hand out to the corporations who pay for his campaign and who have made him rich. So watching that and seeing the way that he lied every step of the way and scapegoated the teachers. At first he said all we need is a $5,000 pay cut and that'll fix the debt. And that's all we want. And the teachers agreed to that. But then after they agreed to that, he went ahead and attacked their collective bargaining rights. Attacked the teachers' unions. So every time the teachers would agree to something, every time they conceded on something, he would go further. And it's massively hurt the Wisconsin education system in the years since. Teachers are now completely overworked, underpaid, and it's hurting the students and the education outcomes. So watching the way that Walker lied about it, watching the way that he touted himself as a hero who was trying to do the right thing, when
Yeah.
it was so obvious to anyone paying attention that he was just serving his corporate donors. That was like a light bulb moment when I realized something at the core of our system was very wrong.
Yeah. Felt he should have actually took some of that money from the police and used to balance the budget, right?
Right, exactly. No, but they go for the teachers, of course.
Yeah, of course. They defund education. They've been defunding education long before anybody ever called for defunding the police. And it's crazy to see how, the base of what actually grows a nation. Because I think it's in South Korea that they call, is it South Korea or anyway, there's an Asian nation that calls their teachers nation builders. And the fact that we don't see our teachers the same way is really just wrong-headed. And it's like we rather uplift uh, police who, if you look at the actual studies show that police really don't protect us the way people think they do, whereas the teachers who actually literally help develop the young people, our future, they are constantly being bombarded and suppressed and depressed in their wages, as well as the type of treatment they receive at work. And so it's just crazy, right?
It is. It's absurd. And there's one of the worst examples in the country was after Hurricane Katrina. A lot of the public schools were wiped out. And
Hmm.
Milton Friedman, who was nearing his final years, wrote an op-ed to George Bush saying you should rebuild all of these public schools as private charter schools,
Oh
so
gosh.
that shareholders can make more profit. And now I actually have a lot of buddies from Louisiana. And after Katrina, the schools became segregated, more so segregated by race, more so segregated by income. And now Louisiana ranks 49th in the country, I believe, in education. And if
Wow.
you're wealthy, you pay $40,000 a year or $40,000 a semester for tuition at a private school, and you get a pretty
Hmm.
good education. But for the vast majority of people in Louisiana, they're in the public school system, which has been dismantled, completely destroyed, and they can't afford these expensive schools. So that's been the result of privatization and dismantling the public education system. And that's a really bad example, but that's happened more or less all across the country. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, think about the effect that has in everything. The fact that the education of our children has been getting worse and the schools are more overcrowded and there's less teachers and they're underpaid and undertrained. They don't, the schools, the facilities themselves don't have enough money. Like,
Hmm.
what effect does that have on the core of our nation if that's how
Yeah.
we're training up the next generation? Like you said, the nation builders example is perfect, or that's a perfect way to put it. Like, teachers are training up the next generation who's going to run society, and we put no importance on that. Continue to cut that while we throw money at militarizing the police and maintaining the empire. Yeah, it's rotten.
Yeah. And for me, one of the things that really kind of shifted me into this and more enlightened direction was it was gradual, but I think it started in 2018, going into 2019, when I heard the phrase Medicare for all for the first time. And when I heard that, I was like, wait a minute, healthcare for everybody instead of it being on an individual basis is actually, collectively spread throughout and given to everybody in the country. And I thought, am I crazy for thinking that? Because I used to think something like that would be great, but at the same time, that's a pie in the sky. That would never happen. It can't happen. There's no logical way that it can ever happen, right? And then I heard this idea, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's interesting. And then going through and seeing some other policies that have came to the fore through like the Bernie Sanders movement, and seeing how people really can actually have nice things in this country. But then you see how the oligarchs and the oppressor class, they tend to treat anybody who is slightly to the left. And then how Bernie Sanders basically left his movement. I know some people are going to disagree and say, well, he didn't leave his movement. I think he did, because truly he could have done more uh, post Democratic post Democratic primary, but he decided not to. But being said, I digress. Seeing all that happen, then it woke me up to there are so many good things that we can have in this country, but they just don't want us to have it because that means that there would be an equalizing taking place. And so the people who are getting the short end of the stick want it equalizing, which is the majority of us, and the people who don't want it are the people that are living high on the hog, and it's a very small amount of them, and they don't want it. And so I say, you know what? It's time for you guys to not have it anymore because you basically, and you find out that it's been stolen. So, yeah.
Definitely. And I think, I mean, pretty much every communist leader ever has said this, but I like the way that Che puts it. You become forged in the class struggle. So you become forged as a socialist or a communist. You become a better, improved organizer and socialist by engaging in class struggle and political struggle and actually trying to fight the system. And so many people who went through the Bernie campaign, saw how he was proposing these common sense policies like single payer healthcare, which have worked all around the world. And the public forms of healthcare that we have, Medicare and Medicaid in the U.S., are the most highly approved forms of payment that exist. So anytime, like you said, the people get a little bit of socialism, they tend to love it. But Bernie comes in and offers just a little bit of socialism, and the entire establishment coalesces against him and calls him an old sexist man, evil, supporter of the Soviet Union, the second coming of Stalin, trying to enact socialized medicine, all this shit. And you see that
second coming of Stalin. That is hilarious. Oh my gosh.
And you see him treat him like that, it's laughable. And you're like, we're never going to be able to work with these people. We're never going to be able to work with the Democratic establishment. And then you watch Bernie, like you said, now supporting the war in Ukraine and imperialism and refusing to really fight the establishment because he always cared more about appeasing the establishment than he did about appeasing his actual base. And you realize that, we have to be more radical. We have to base ourselves in the workers and working class organizations, not cross our fingers and hope these politicians will fight for us.
Yeah. And dude, do you remember? Okay, this is funny. Do you remember when Chris Matthews said on live television, "Oh, if these socialists win, they're going to take people like me out to Central Park and they're going to shoot me in the head." Like, what? Dude, what the heck? What? You are so propagandized. He literally said that on live. I was watching live. I'm like, what? And he called us brown shirts. I'm like, oh, dude, get off the air. Get off the air. Because number one, it's crazy. It's asinine when people go, Bernie's a socialist. It's like, tell me you don't know the definition of socialism without telling me you don't know the definition of socialism. Like, Bernie's not a socialist. He never was. He might have been closer to it. He's not even a democratic socialist. He's more of a social democrat. And basically, if you really want to go by the actual definition. And it's funny because you get a lot of people who say, well, I don't like labels. Labels are bad. And I'm like, I don't think you don't like labels. I just think you don't like being labeled correctly. You don't like to be mislabeled. I think labels are important in society in order to differentiate and classify different things that need to be classified. But when they get misinterpreted for what they are, or they're giving the wrong definition of what that label is, then that's when people get upset. So therefore, when I say socialism, I mean it in the actual sense of the word. That's what I mean. Workers owning in the community, owning the means of production and distribution, having community owned when it comes to utilities and things like that. That's what I mean by socialism. Bernie's not. The squad and the progressives are not. And so, you get some people who go, well, they're communists and they're Marxists. No, they're not. It's like, and here's the crazy part. if you go issue for issue on everything that somebody like myself believes, right? You can get somebody that considers themselves, that typically votes Republican, that'll agree with 65%, maybe 70% of everything that I believe. And the crazy part is they don't even know it. Minus maybe a couple social issues, but they actually would agree. And I think that's part of the reason why it's good to, to let them know, like, hey, you're propagandized too. So
Definitely.
yeah.
I mean, I think labels are useful and important. We just have to understand how they work and understand how they're defined.
Hmm.
And understand that like a lot of people are just scared away by the label socialism or communism, but they tend to not even know what it means. And like you said, if you go issue for issue with them,
Hmm.
they'll tend to agree with you. So we kind of have to, do some work in redefining what these labels mean, explaining to people, no, Bernie's not a communist. He's not the same ideology as Lenin.
Hmm.
Bernie Sanders is not even a democratic socialist. He's a social democrat. And kind of explain that to people.
Hmm.
And also point out to people how the establishment coalesces against Bernie and how that is more dictatorial, the way that they block him from the political process in service of the finance capitalists and the military industrial complex. That's more dictatorial than anything Cuba or China or these existing socialist countries are doing that they try and conflate Bernie with. Like,
Hmm.
I remember not only did you have Chris Matthews saying that if Bernie wins, he's going to be killed in Times Square, but you had MSNBC people saying, well, when it looked like Bernie was going to win, they were saying, well, this is technically just a party election,
Hmm.
right? This is the Democratic election, right? This isn't the national election. So even if Bernie gets the most votes, we could still have the Democratic delegates go for Hillary. Or I mean, sorry, go for Biden. Like they don't have to go with Bernie. Basically, floating the idea of just ignoring the democratic will of the people and having the party elites choose Joe Biden to be their representative, which is the most authoritarian thing I've ever heard of. Just completely overturning an election to appoint the person who is preferred by the party elites. But that's the way that the Democratic Party works. It's rotten. And we need to think about organizing by class more so than organizing within the Democratic or the Republican Party.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's a lot of us are now starting to talk about this stuff as working class issues, because healthcare is a working class issue, right? Having like for instance, I'm for a full nationalization of our healthcare system because number one, we could have single payer, but how is that really going to truly stop the hospitals, the medical device manufacturers, and big pharma from basically, still robbing the bank, so to speak, you know, just so that we can have healthcare? It's like, nah, because I don't think that these things should be done for profit. I don't think hospitals should be operated for profit. I don't think pharmaceuticals should be created, and distributed for profit. So, with that being said, if you put the profit motive in front of people, it creates a barrier that means that only people who can't afford it can actually live. You're basically saying if you can't afford it, you deserve to die. And I don't agree with that. Now, I think that, and a lot of people will be like, well, how do they get paid? Well, yeah, we're taxpayers. We have, we have public money. Just pay them through that. Why are, it's just like we don't have private military to protect us. We don't have, oh, I got my private military and you got your choice for private military. No, no, no. It's for everyone so that the entire country is protected, right? Same thing with healthcare. I think everybody should be, as far as their health, protected universally. And people, some people, would agree. Some people who may not even agree with me on social issues may agree and say, well, you know what? You're right. We all should be protected. From the person who is homeless sleeping out on the street to the richest among us, they all should have protection. And they all should have an equal, amount of protection too, which means a very high level of healthcare. I think everybody should get platinum standard.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people, I mean, I think the vast majority of working people agree with that. There are some studies now that show like 55% of Republicans support Medicare for all, depending on how it's framed, or single payer healthcare.
Yeah.
And then obviously a huge percentage of Democratic workers, the union support it. They understand how much of their collective bargaining resources go into bargaining for better healthcare benefits.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a graduate degree in healthcare administration right now. That's what I'm studying in school. And like single payer, people said that Obamacare, the ACA, Affordable Care Act, was a half measure. That was less than a half measure. Single payer is the half measure, or even less than that. All right, getting rid of the insurance companies is the bare minimum. I promise you guys, the whole system is corrupt. They're all conglomerated into these healthcare or hospital systems like CVS Group and other things like that. So it's the pharmaceuticals are tied up with the insurance, are tied up with the providers, are tied up with the ambulance companies, which means it's all fragmented. So like say if I got hit by a car and I needed an ambulance, the first thing they would ask me is, what hospital do you want to go to that's covered by your insurance? So if it's not within your insurance, even if that hospital is closer and more convenient, the ambulance will take you somewhere else. Or if it's not within that ambulance system. So not only would it save tons of money to cover everybody, not only would it cover everybody, and that would be good, but it would save a ton of money. And the system would function so efficiently and so much better. We have the technological capability right now in healthcare via things like telehealth and electronic health records. These things have evolved so far. We could have an entirely cohesive system that covers everybody in the country and delivers healthcare, at an incredibly fast rate. We have the best healthcare technology in the world. It's just the way that it's organized is so stupid. It's so stupid. It's so expensive. It's so fragmented. And it's gotten to the point now where 60% of Americans have medical debt at some point, because the system is also commodified. It's nothing but a way to make tons of money for people at this point. Which, I think any working person in the country of any political persuasion would be against that.
Of course.
Can I run to the bathroom quick? Sorry, I'll be right back.
No, it's all
I gotta
good.
go.
It's all good. But yes, he's absolutely correct. When it comes to the commodification, especially of our healthcare system. And one point I think that needs to be made, is that you'll have people who go, well, you don't want it to be ran by the government because the government ruins everything. My question is, if the government is better, then why do we have hundreds of thousands of people dying every single year because they don't have health care? If capitalism breeds innovation, why do people still die because they don't have health care? Oh, because it means that people literally have to make profit, make money in order to be able to have it. Which basically means, you end up demonizing people who don't produce. And demonizing people who don't produce, because you feel like they don't have a material or labor value because they don't produce, instead of looking at people from their human value. I just think that's dumb. Because the thing is that people have human value, therefore they deserve healthcare regardless. But yeah, that's just me. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just caught the end of what you're saying, but I agree. Everybody provides use within their community. Everybody, you provide use to other people via the relationships that you have with them. Through communicating with people. Humans need other humans. We're social beings. We'd go crazy if we didn't have each other.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody is useful then.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we should think about things collectively, not in terms of, value equals sheer production.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, everyone needs healthcare.
Yeah. And so, with that being said, and we talked about being on the left, I would just like to get your an objective analysis about the left today. We see that the left seems to be fractured on many ways, to the point where it seems like there's every single week somebody is upset at somebody for something. What do you think is one of the biggest obstacles of the left? And what do you think is the best remedy for us? And really could be said more the online left, I should say. But what do you think is one of the biggest issues that you see? And is there any idea of how to remedy that situation?
Yeah, I think that the main remedy is always to focus on class, and the main problem is sometimes an inability to focus on class,
Mm,
and materially organizing the class, and more so focus on what the hot button debates are right now online, which a lot of times most of the working class probably doesn't even care about or isn't paying attention to. And part of the reason this happens, I think, I was just looking at our YouTube analytics today for the first time in forever, and all of our most popular videos, or almost all of them, are videos where we're calling someone out, or doing a reaction video, or talking about how Vaush is an imperialist, or even criticizing people who would be considered our allies within the online left. So for one, that stuff gets a lot of views. Like, I think
yeah.
TYT at this point just uses Jimmy Dore's name because they don't know what else to talk about, and
Yeah.
that's the only way they can get their views over like 5,000.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
even with all that corporate money. But so I think that's part of it. But then, like, just focusing on organizing by class and understanding that politics is local. This is something that RBN says all the time. You guys, that
Yeah.
I love. It's so important.
Hmm.
Socialism is based on organizing the working class, and politics is local. So as I've been starting a CPUSA chapter in my area and doing all this party work, I'm realizing that, the online stuff is important. We want to reach new people with socialism, and, even having debates online can be important. Like, I criticize the MAGA communism thing, but what's more important is investing in your community,
Yeah.
building real organs of working class power. Because no matter what our debates are about online, if we're not strengthening organs of working class power, and
Hmm.
developing new organs of working class power, unions connected to the party, and theoretically educated workers, then we're not doing anything. That's what it's all about. And our stuff online, our education and outreach online, should be intended to do the same thing, to push people to organize the working class, where in their locality, wherever they're at.
Hmm.
So I think that just keeping that as our focus, which I think we've done a fairly good job of at Midwestern Marks, and I think RBN does a good job of that. Of at the end of the day, it's all about organizing the working class. Whatever goes on online, which I think a lot of online commentators and streamers tend to stray away from that, at least at times.
Yeah. And it's interesting. And I want to do this because I think that you hit a really great point. Is that there are other groups who are also are doing this on the ground, like for instance, the African People's Socialist Party. And if you remember, they were actually raided by the FBI a week before Trump was raided in Mar-a-Lago. and they were raided because they were being accused of being Russian assets, which completely is fabricated and a bunch of BS. But anyway, they're literally doing work on the ground in different areas, and in fact, I think they're in St. Louis. And I would encourage, anybody who's within the area. I think you're a few hours away, Eddie, but
Mhm.
you know, they would really, uh, they are really doing the work. And, people like Rome of RBN is doing a lot of work on the ground. I'm trying to do some work on the ground here. It's just being disabled makes it a little bit difficult, but you know, you know, the work on the ground is extremely important to realize that the government that we have is really just corporation. It's a corporate takeover. And so I just wanted to show you guys this really quick. If in case you guys don't know about the African People's Socialist Party, they're also doing work on the ground in different areas of the country. So if you guys are not aware of them, then I, think you guys should be more intimately aware. Right here in the middle, it says, watch FBI attacks Uhuru movement on July 29th. That was actually also done in St. Petersburg. That wasn't too far from me. But the reason why I'm sharing this is because, just like what Eddie said, they're literally doing the work on the ground to really show people this is what true socialism, communism is actually the community coming together, each according to their ability and each according to their need in order to provide for everyone. So I just wanted to bring that up as an example of what you were saying.
Definitely. And that's a perfect example. And I think the way that the online left reacted to that is an example of not being focused on class, because the debates that week, as you said, were all about Trump. Do we reach out to Trump supporters who hate the FBI, or do we not reach out to them? Trump, 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 Trump. It's like Trump is, bourgeois class. He's not of our class. He is
Yeah.
he pretended to be a populist. But in that same week, or even the week before Trump, you had these working class organizers who are actually involved on the ground who got raided by the FBI, and only a few people on the so-called online left are even talking about it. It's
Yeah.
like, where is our solidarity with these working class movements when they're attacked by the armed bodies of the state, the dictatorship of capital?
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's like a good example. Like, let's put our energy and focus towards putting solidarity and drawing awareness of the FBI cracking down on our allies. Not that the debate about Trump was worth having too, but I mean, I think sometimes we lose focus. And also,
Hmm.
talking about Trump is something that's going to get clicks and likes, so that's another element.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that if we focus more on the class issue, we got to keep our eyes on the ball, right?
Yes.
Because, and here's the nerd in me coming out, the geek in me. But if you're so focused on the Chitari, you're not focused on Thanos. So to speak. You know what I mean? You're so focused on the henchman, and you got the big purple baddie right there with the Infinity Gauntlet. I'm like, no, leave them alone. You got the big guy right in front of you. Attack him. And by him, I mean capitalism. By him, I mean imperialism and colonialism. That's what I mean. It's like the late Michael Brooks said, be kind to people, but be ruthless to systems and institutions. That being said, people are going to be wrong, and we can deal with them, and do it in a kind way. But let's not take our focus off the main enemy. And the main enemy is the reason why we're in this situation in the first place. That enemy is the reason why a lot of us black people We were brought here as slaves. That main enemy is one of the reasons why our ancestors suffered. Like, we got to be real about it. That is one of the main enemies, is one of the reasons why we got white supremacy in this country. And we have oligarchy. So I think that a lot of times we can veer off because it's almost kind of like, ooh, shiny, ooh, shiny, ooh, shiny. It's like, and plus the subjects that a lot of what you and talk about, what those of us on RBN talk about, what I talk about, what Savvy talks about, Heartland's Media and MCSC, and Indie News Network, some of the subject that we talk about aren't very sexy unless it's, talking about somebody else, So I think it's important also to keep our focus on, the primary. Uh, I don't even want to say antagonist because that kind of like makes them more or less, evil. I should say villain, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just attacking capitalism at its foundations. I mean, that's the word Lenin always used. Is we have to wage our struggle against capitalism at its
Yeah.
foundations, at the relations of production. And then I think a lot of, I mean, any issue, any societal issue is worth talking about, but any systemic issue within capitalism, you're going to be able to tie back to capitalism. So I think that's another important thing is, finding out what specific issues are important to people and then being like, here's how white supremacy and white supremacist systems are perpetuated by capitalism or were formed by capitalism. Or were formed to make money for capitalists. Here's how the prison industrial complex is just a way to make all these corporations money. And that's why the police are militarized. And we have the racist drug war. And
Yeah.
just tying these things to the relations of production is another way to attack capitalism at its foundations, as Lenin would say.
Yeah, basically. And so, if you don't mind, I also wanted to touch on a couple of things in the news, if that's cool with you, that
Definitely.
recent that came out, and I wanted to touch on this one thing. Now, here's a Marxist that I think you'll appreciate. Dr. Richard Wolff actually put out a video this morning, in fact.
Let's go.
And
what
I wanted to touch on it. Um, the title of this video is "Sanctions Against Russia Aren't Working." So this is going to be really interesting because typically, um, there's a lot of there seems to be somewhat a divide on the whole issue regarding Russia and Ukraine, but I'd like to see your thoughts on
what happened
what Dr. Wolf actually says in this. So, if you need me to pause, just let me know, and I will pause it at different intervals just to get your thoughts. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Let me enlarge.
with the sanctions that were created and applied mostly by the United States, but with its European allies by and large, uh, against Russia, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine back at the end of February of this year. Those sanctions, often referred to as the mother of all sanctions, because they were bigger and more comprehensive even than Mr. Trump's sanctions against China, which were the biggest we had ever seen at that point. These were promised to bring Russia to its knees, basically to destroy the Russian economy or so badly weaken it that the Russians would reconsider, end their invasion, and take their troops and tanks and all the rest back across the border from which they had come. And much of the media continue to talk about all these things that were promised to happen by all the experts that the government called in and that were in front of the media. Most of the mainstream media continues to talk, as if all of this was working pretty much according to plan. Well, it isn't. If you have the time to take a look at publications outside the United States, you would already know that. But what I'm wanting to bring to you is a publication that represents all of this quite honestly from inside the United States. The publication is called Business Insider. You can find it on the internet quite easily. And if you look up the edition of August 28th of this year, you will find out that the sanctions have failed. The experts were wrong. That's a quote from the article. The experts were wrong. So let me review what I learned from this article. The sanctions involved imposing a blockade. The United States, Western Europe were to stop buying Russian oil and gas. They froze the sanctions, about half of the reserves Russia has deposited in Western banks as a backing for their currency. They blocked Russians from using the SWIFT and other international payment systems that are the lifeline of buying and selling in the international market. No less experts than the two leading banks, probably in the United States, JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, said the Russian economy would immediately collapse. It didn't. In fact, it shrank after March of this year, that is, after weeks of the invasion had happened. It shrank less after the invasion than it shrank when COVID hit 2 years earlier in March of 2020.
All right, you can pause it. I want to talk about that. So someone sent me a piece recently, or not a piece, a big document from the Rand Corporation recently, which is one of the most powerful corporations in the West, sort of like not corporations, but like a think tank. So they put out sort of the ideology or the goals of the military industrial complex and of the finance capitalists, the bankers and large industrial capitalists in the U.S. And they said on page 95 of that document, their strategic goal is to decrease Russia's gas supply. Russia has been increasing the amount of energy that they produce. This is largely something that's happened under Putin. So after the fall of the Soviet Union, the Russian economy was destroyed, pillaged by Western multinationals. So when Putin came to power, he nationalized various swaths of the energy sector, like natural gas and oil. And now that's being reinvested in strengthening Russia's infrastructure, strengthening Russia's other industries, some social welfare programs. And we know that the U.S. hates when another country is using oil or any of their other resources to invest in themselves. So now you have European countries, traditionally U.S. allies, who are getting like 50% of their energy from Russia. And the U.S. is just trying to sanction Russia and cut them off completely. And people in Europe, I mean, working class people, of course, the oligarchs will be fine, but people are suffering. People are, struggling to put food on the table and heat their homes. And the sanctions have completely backfired. So we see it's exactly as, Lenin says in his book, Imperialism. It's production that matters first. It's the resources. It's the production of gas and energy that makes the imperialists mad. They want to be producing the energy or controlling all of the energy that's produced and sold. Instead, it's being reinvested in Russia, making Russia stronger, more of a global competitor to the U.S. militarily, economically, politically, every way. So now, we've seen this proxy war that they're waging against them via Ukraine. And, no matter how poorly the proxy war goes, no matter how many Ukrainians die, the U.S. refuses to negotiate any kind of peace settlement. They just keep saying more weapons, more weapons, more weapons, and pushing this idea that, Ukraine has a chance of victory, which is terrible because they're just inflaming and prolonging the conflict. And we covered the other day on Midwestern Marks, this YouTube show called Infographics. It's like a really mainstream history sort of cartoon show with like 12 million subscribers. And they published a video titled "How Ukraine is Winning Because of These some weapons, some like missile that they were being sold by the U.S." So not
Is it
only
Javelin?
it was some like giant Jeep type thing that fired javelins out of the back of it. But
Okay.
basically, they were saying because the military industrial complex has sold so many of these to Ukraine, Ukraine's winning. You know, which is one doing military industrial complex propaganda, and they've made an absolute killing off of dumping all these weapons into Ukraine. But it's two, it's terrible for, you know, Ukrainians and anybody who's involved in the conflict, because NATO at this point is basically pushing Ukraine to keep fighting down to the last man at gunpoint, rather than looking for some kind of peace settlement, as the media is constantly telling us, you know, Ukraine is going to win, when in reality nobody's really winning here. People are dying, except for the only winners are the military industrial complex.
Thank you very much for that. It's very interesting because, yeah, it's true. I mean, war is a racket, and that's what they're using it for. All right, let's continue.
The currency, which did take a dive immediately after, is now worth more in international currency exchange than it was before the Russian. Immediately after is now worth more in international currency exchange than it was before the Russians invaded. In other words, the Russian invasion has made their currency more valuable. The Russians are earning more money in trade around the world today, 6 months after the invasion, than they did before the invasion. Yes, Europeans are buying less oil and less gas from Russia than they did, and that might have hurt Russia if no one else had been found to buy from Russia the oil and gas, etc., that the Europeans and the Americans were no longer buying. But the mistake of the experts was not understanding that the Russians could, and indeed they have, found alternative buyers. All over the world, Russia has not collapsed, not even close. All the experts who said it would in the government, right up to Mr. Biden himself, and in the leading experts the government relies on, such as the top bankers at Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, they were all wrong in what they thought would happen.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is partially the beauty of China's developmental strategy, where they're trying to help giving all of their allies low interest developmental loans, trying to help them produce for themselves. Because what U.S. imperialism has done is prevent countries from being self-sufficient, self-sustainable. Most of the surplus that they produce goes to the U.S. For accumulation in Western banks or for Western finance capitalists. So now, as the U.S. and Western capitalists have outsourced a lot of our productive jobs, a lot of our manufacturing jobs, looking for cheap labor and cheap resources, China and Russia and increasingly their allies through the Belt and Road Initiative have become the productive base for like the entire world. They produce everything. Every commodity you see says made in China. So now the U.S.'s sanctions are just much less effective. China or Russia can just turn to their other trade partners. And China, Russia, and their allies can produce a lot for themselves, and the U.S. can't just sanction them and starve them out as easily as they once could. And then I also like that Richard Wolff points out that these Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase bankers are the ones who made these sanction policies. and who said that Russia was going to collapse. Because one, it shows how undemocratic our government is. We didn't elect these people. We didn't elect bankers to handcraft our policy, yet there they are doing it. And it shows that Lenin points out that capitalism reaches its imperialist stage. And this is an important point. Once industrial capital, so say like capitalists who own oil companies or steel companies or whatever else, when those merge with the banks and you have the creation of finance capital, and this allows them to move their wealth and their assets around much easier. And it also creates like these oligarchs then sitting on the boards of these banks like JP Morgan Chase and US Bank, whatever, these giant Western banks. The people sitting on top of those have an interest in Russian energy and Russian gas and all of these resources because they have their hands everywhere. They own shares in everything. Then you have the creation of a financial oligarchy out of that, a government which works at the behest of those finance capitalists, industrial capitalists merged with bankers. And that's exactly what this is. You have JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs executives handcrafting American imperialist policy.
Yeah. And so it's just crazy how, the United States thinks, that's going to get Russia for sure. Next thing you know, now, guess what? Europeans are worried because now they don't have enough energy to heat their homes for this winter. And Russia's like, okay, so you guys don't want to, allow us to, sell to Europe? Okay, we're going to the east. And next thing you know, boom. And then their currency is now on the rise and they're now making more money. And so it's like the United States, and trying to do a proxy war is really shooting their allies in the foot. And
absolutely,
it's like that. The United States is like the United States and Europe is like two dudes that are standing together, and they have their enemy standing in front of them. And the United States gives their friend standing next to them the cup of poison and say, "Drink that." And then you're looking at the person who you're against, going, "Hey, see, you keep this up, that's going to be for you." And next thing you know, your friend that's standing next to you ends up falling out and going comatose because you told them to take the poison, even though it was meant for the person that's standing in front of you. It's like, what? Are you kidding me right now? The blowback is insane.
And who is it facing the blowback? I mean, who is it fighting the war? Who, the troops? And then who is it facing the blowback? It's not the rich. It's not the Goldman Sachs executives. It's not Biden. It's the working people. It's the working people in Europe, the working people in Russia, the working people in Ukraine, the working people in the U.S.'s European ally countries, and the people in the U.S. now. The working people always pay the bill for war and fight the wars, which are always at the behest of these oligarchs, no matter what they tell you, what lies they tell you.
Yeah. And look at people who are in the UK right now that were complaining about their energy bills. Nobody's talking about it right now because of an old monarch that just died. Mm-hmm. Nobody's talking about it anymore, about how people in the UK, their bills are skyrocketing. Like literally, like right before, and she's a colonial imperialist, so I'm not gonna give her much respect. So when the queen croaked, all right, I'm gonna say it just like that because I have no respect for colonial people like that, for colonial people who maintain that power. When she croaked, all right, then now you have nobody talking about their energy bills in the UK. Talk to people in Britain about how expensive their light bill is. And really, just like you said, it's people who are literally the workers, the people who are the most disenfranchised among us that are really, paying the price for the greed of the oligarchs, whether it's the oligarchs here in the United States, whether it's the oligarchs in Europe, especially Western Europe and in the Western countries. They are usually the ones who are basically getting their yachts paid for on our hands by by our blood, and it's crazy.
It is. And I mean, that's why I think these issues of imperialism and these issues of class are where we can unite people. I mean, people recognize that these banks and these oligarchs run our country. It's just uniting them in some kind of vehicle, some kind of party that's not the Democratic or Republican Party against that. The energy's there. I think so, anyways.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So thank you for your thoughts on that. But I also wanted to touch on an article that I saw, and this one's kind of depressing, but I think it's necessary to talk about because it really talks about how ultimately it is those of us who are poor and working, we carry the short end of the stick every single time. So let me pull this article up because on Twitter actually have been sharing this headline. Uh, they've been sharing this headline uh, all this morning that I've been seeing, and this headline is sad in itself. It says Canadians turn to euthanasia as a solution to unbearable poverty. Um, so did not show. Get that out of my face. No, I don't want to subscribe. Gosh, it won't go away. Okay, thank you. It went
The
away.
Venezuelan government's pressuring you. They want you to subscribe.
It says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's administration has expressed support for the Medical Assistance in Dying MAID program being expanded to people suffering from irredeemable mental illnesses. The implications of this option, however, have raised ethical concerns. In 2016, by approving Bill C-14, a law permitting medical euthanasia and physician assistant S, I have to be careful what I say on here. The Parliament ruled that Canadian states shall cover the cost of euthanasia for people who suffer terminal illness with foreseeable natural death and who are too poor to afford this procedure. In March 2021, legislators repealed the reasonably foreseeable requirement and the provisions specifying that the patient's condition should be quote unquote terminal. As a consequence of the above, all people suffering from an illness or disability that cannot be relieved under acceptable conditions can apply for the MAID program. So basically, in so many words, so many people are now in a position where they feel like they just are financially at dire straits that it's cheaper and more reasonable for them to eliminate themselves than to continue to keep this going. And this is from Amanda Ackman. It's a tweet from her. She said in 1941, Nazi made this table showing how much money the government would save by preventing persons with disabilities from living 10 years longer. In 2020, the Parliamentary Budget Officer in Canada released a table of the quote reduction in healthcare costs end quote through euthanasia, and basically that's what's going on right now. William, what are your thoughts about this?
I mean, that's interesting that they quote the healthcare student or the healthcare administrative standpoint, because obviously that's what I'm studying right now. And this is the kind of thing that they would have you look at for healthcare administration in the US and be like, well, it saves us money. And, most of these patients who are selecting voluntary euthanasia can't, they don't have insurance. They're underinsured. So, like, this is a good policy because it saves the hospital money. That's how they teach you to administrate healthcare, but obviously it doesn't make sense on a human level, or it's just completely sick on a human level. But yeah, and I mean, there is an argument to be made for euthanasia or for not, basically keeping people alive for months and months and months who are unresponsive, basically vegetables, because resources could be diverted elsewhere. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people here who could be treated, but they can't pay for it. And the medical system is so profit-based and commodified, they're literally saying, well, just shrugging their shoulders and saying, well, we can kill them. We can just eliminate people, which is the opposite of how a healthcare system's supposed to work. It's becoming completely inverted now, where rather than heal people, they're doing the opposite. And someone says in the comments, I saw, like, this didn't get reported on in Western media. And like, yeah, Telesur is literally Venezuelan government media. It's like they're the Venezuelan government's media outlet. And we have to rely on journalists from Venezuela to do better analysis of our own healthcare system, because our corporations are owned by the same people who own and have commodified our healthcare system. I mean, our news outlets. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to touch on a sentence here. Um, this person says the government it says a woman in Ontario, for example, chose euthanasia because her housing benefits did not allow her to obtain a place to live and avoid crippling allergies. That person could have been helped. Hang on. This, highlight the please just highlight that part. Anyway, whatever. But it says a woman out in Ontario chose euthanasia because her housing benefits did not allow her to obtain a place to live and avoid crippling allergies. Like, what in the hell, man? And the quote says, the government sees me as expendable, whiny, useless scum. She said she left letters showing a desperate search for governmental help for over 2 years. How many of us have gone through that? Like, as somebody that's disabled, this hurts my heart that people are literally choosing to die, to be assisted in dying, because they can't afford the medical as well as help for their housing costs. Because they're becoming housing insecure. So with that being said, it boggles my mind how you have people who are willing to allow this to happen because they say, well, that's just the way the system is. It's like, what do you say to people who say, well, that's just the way the system is? What would you say to that?
I mean, I would say, how is that? We created the system as humans. So how are we allowing a system that treats people like they're not human beings? That, like we say that disabled people need to fit themselves into the system. It's like, well, why does the system not adapt to them? We make the system. We can change the system, but with capitalism, there's no control. It's an anarchic system where a handful of oligarchs are running everything based on what's best for them and their profit motives. So then you get ridiculous stuff like this, where the system refuses to adapt to people. I mean, this is a little bit different or off topic, but Lev Vygotsky, who made a lot of breakthroughs in educational psychology in the Soviet Union, and this has been taken out of its work when it's taught in the US, but he did a lot of stuff about ableism and how the education system, you're supposed to fit yourself into it rather than the education system being adapted to you and trying to highlight and promote your strengths. And that's the kind of society that we could have if we had control over production, rather than having this anarchic system run by oligarchs. But yeah, we got to get rid of the capitalist system before we can do that. Because the capitalist system, would rather kill people than make them well if it can save them a few bucks.
Yeah. And then there is a tweet that was shared. It says here, Ukraine and the United States were the only two countries to vote against a Russian resolution on, quote, combating the glorification of Nazism and neo-Nazism, end quote, at the United Nations. The European Union and Canada were among the abstentions. Your thoughts?
It's crazy. I remember when that happened thinking, what is going on in Ukraine? And I didn't understand it at the level I do now, but yeah, and there were reports the other day that the Atlantic Council, like this weapons contractor think tank, along with Zelensky, were saying that they want to turn Ukraine into a big Israel, literally, which Israel is a fascist apartheid state that, you know, is an outlet or a footprint of U.S. and Western military power in the Middle East. And that's exactly what they want to do with Ukraine. They want to turn it into a literal fascist apartheid state that they can constantly use to attack Russia. And that's why that's why they didn't vote to condemn Nazism, because Nazi or liberals, liberal imperialists love Nazis.
Yeah, yeah. And to anybody who's new to this, what Eddie just said, if that seems jarring and shocking to you, and you're thinking, man, where has the world gone, this late date? I want you to look up Operation Paperclip. Look that up. And that'll let you know how long fascism has been interwoven into our society and this government. It's been a long time. It's nothing new. Um, so yeah, this story was just something that it smacked my face, and I was just like, what? Like, people literally choosing, um, to euthanize themselves because they just can't afford to live. So basically, it's just like a slightly quicker form of what a lot of these Western governments are doing to people. Because really, it's like, okay, well, if you can't produce much, then you're going to just die in poverty. Oh, you want to do it quicker so that we can just get rid of you even faster? Okay, we'll assist you with this. And it's like there's no humanity at all when it comes to these Western nations. There's no consideration. Like, for instance, wasn't it China that lifted 800 million people out of poverty within the last few years with their programs? And it's like, okay, so they can do that, right? The richest country in the history of the world can't do that. We can't lift our people out of poverty and eliminate homelessness and houselessness in this country. But apparently that's too much of a task, because the people who are at the top want to keep their second, third, fourth, fifth house. They want to keep that big ass yacht, or that super yacht that actually is attached to their smaller yacht that carries their cars and they has the helipad. Like, are you kidding me? It's so like you have to laugh, because if not, you'll start crying, right?
It's true. I mean, literally, who was it? Bezos had a yacht that was so big he needed another yacht to hold it up, and they're sending themselves to space. And meanwhile, the hospitals are, suggesting euthanasia for people who can't afford their bills.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can you look at this and say this is rational?
Yeah, like, you literally have Lex Luthor jumping up in a giant dildo and fucking the sky because he wants to show, oh, I can do it because I'm rich. And then next thing you know, you got people literally dying. You have people in Jackson, Mississippi that literally have no clean drinking water. And you got this cue ball wanting to basically show that, oh, well, I can go up into space. Thanks, everybody. And meanwhile, you have, people who literally have died by the hands of Jeff Bezos. And I'm going to be talking about this on RBN on Sunday. I'm going to be talking about Pushan Brown, because she literally was killed by Bezos. And people be like, oh, that's hyperbolic. No, it's not. It's not hyperbolic. Because she was literally one of the people who was administering COVID tests as an unlicensed and not a medical professional, and she literally died from COVID because Amazon put her in charge of testing people for COVID before we even had a vaccine, and she died. And Jeff Bezos and Amazon is not doing a damn thing for her or her family. So I'll be talking about that with her sister this Sunday on RBN. But I'm telling you right now, we literally have a country and a world that is ran by supervillains. And people laugh when I say that, but it's true. It's true, dude. It's crazy, man.
It is. Elon's another example.
Yes.
I mean, if you want to talk about killing people, the coup in Bolivia led to so many trade unionists and activists being murdered by the Christian fascists who Elon Musk backed for lithium and then bragged about it, talking about supervillain shit. And then he not only, does Bezos and Elon Musk spend all their money on ridiculous, luxurious things while the infrastructure is crumbling and people don't have clean water, but Musk will even, tell local governments, don't do this like high-speed rail project or don't do this public infrastructure project. I'm going to do some high concept, really, cool sounding plan, like build underground tunnels for people to get around. And then Musk won't follow through. So his plans end up not following through, and the governments end up canceling their plans for public infrastructure. So then nothing gets done for the people. So it's just a bulwark, from him getting taxed and having to pay for some public infrastructure job. That's what he's actually trying to stop.
Hey, wasn't Musk one of the people who said, what does it take to actually end world hunger? Let me know the plan, and then I will do it. I will end world hunger. Then people were like, okay, here's how to do it. Here's how much it cost. I think it was like $6 billion, some small number in comparison to his wealth. And then when he actually got the information, crickets, nothing. It's like, dude, you literally have enough wealth to end hunger in the world. And people actually responded to you and showed you how you can do it. And you did nothing. And so when a lot of people, like, for instance, I know you've had this conversation before. I've had this conversation before. Especially a lot of times it comes around like when the lottery comes up and it's this huge, exorbitant number, you start thinking of, what would I do with that type of money, right? You had those conversations, right?
Definitely.
So, and then you think, well, I would do this, I would do that, I would do this, I would do that. When push comes to shove, you literally have people that have won the lottery as far as capitalism is concerned, basically through the theft of surplus labor. They have it. And you're like, why haven't they done it? What does that make you think?
It makes me think that they're in a different, like they have a completely different psychology than me and my family and most of the people that I know. Because, like, you think, oh, if I won the lottery, I would do all these things and I would help all these people. And these guys have so much more money than that. And not only do they only think about expanding and accumulating their own wealth, but when they donate money, like Bill Gates, like which the recent article I wrote was about, it's used to promote their financial ventures, or ultimately are used to bring them profit. And then these capitalists act like they're the best people in the world. They're hoarding all the world's wealth. They don't work. Everything they have is from exploiting people. Their charities are fake and designed to make them money. And then they're super cocky and they tell you that you just need to work hard like them and they're the best and all the great things we have in the world are because of them. It's some kind of sick, twisted, psychopathic psychology that I can't even wrap my mind around.
They work hard, Eddie.
There's this video where Jeff Bezos, they ask him what's the key to his success, and he's like, oh, well, when I first wake up in the morning at like 7, I don't do anything for the first 3 hours, and I just think about ideas, and I call that my putter time. He's like, everybody should do that. It's like, Jeff, the people who work in your factories can't spend 3 hours in the morning doing nothing. They have to get ready to go to work. Like, you can only do that because you're wealthy. They're so out of touch.
Supervillain shit.
Uh-huh.
Supervillain shit. Guys, look, just to let you guys know, and Eddie, you rounded this very beautifully. just because they're rich doesn't mean they're smart, right? God, oh my goodness. Okay, so in that same line, I want to go back to my questions. Yeah, I veered from my questions, but this is a hypothetical question that I always ask one of my guests, and I want to ask you this, and I want to get through these questions because I want to be respectful of your time. But this hypothetical question, I kind of have a feeling I know how you'll answer, but I'm really curious to see what you'll say. Hypothetically, you are president of the United States. It is January 20th, your inauguration day. What are the first three actions you are taking as president within your first 100 days?
That's tough because I'm not exactly sure what I would be able to do with executive action or with the presidential power, but I would say the fact that 60,000 people die every year due to lack of health insurance, I would declare that a national emergency. And I would try and use that to push for at least single payer. So we need at least Medicare for all if we're not going to nationalize all these things. The next thing I would try and do is withdraw from any war that I could. Withdraw troops from anywhere that the Pentagon would allow me to, because Trump kind of tried to willy-nilly pull like every troop out like 2 days before he left office, and the Pentagon just blocked it. So you'd have to go about it in a more strategic way than that to get around the Pentagon officials and military industrial complex and intelligence agencies to bring troops out. But that, and then I would do anything I possibly could to relieve sanctions on Afghanistan and Venezuela, Cuba, especially the ones on Afghanistan right now, because 22.8 million people are food insecure right now because of Biden's sanctions. That's like half the country of Afghanistan. So that could lead to mass death here in the coming future if they're not taken off. So, yeah, good question.
Right. Yeah, thank you so much. Some good answers. Now, what is one thing that you want to double down on this year? Because everybody talks about, oh well, I want to, I have this resolution, or I have this one thing I want to change. I want to know what do you want to double down on? Basically, like, I'm doing this even more than I did, in years past.
That's a good question. I would say calling out shit libs, calling out rad libs and shit libs, because honestly, I've done more and more of that the longer that I've been online. Just like not really caring. I mean, I care how people respond when I say things, because it matters how your audience reacts and how your friends react. But not like the mob of angry rad libs on Twitter anymore, or a lot of people on TikTok. Like, if I put a stance out there and it's principled and I back it up with evidence and I know that I believe that, like, I don't, at that point, let people say what they want. So I've doubled down on just saying what I believe, saying organized by class over and over and over again, and then not really caring about the cancel culture woke Twitter mob that comes after me. Yeah, I know people don't like that word woke, but I mean people who are like all about liberal individualism is what I really mean by that.
Yeah. Just to address that, I like the word woke because it originated with Black people, and the actual true meaning of it meant, aware and enlightened to to what disenfranchised people are going through and wanting to change it. I think a lot of the liberals have co-opted it and made it into something that originally it wasn't. And so now you have some people, especially a lot of conservatives, that think being woke is something bad, when actually being woke was something that was good, especially for those of us who are the most downtrodden and disenfranchised. So I think that we need to take that word back for being woke, and make it and keep it as a good thing. The thing is, I think that, people like, especially like a lot of Democrats, a lot of people who are in liberal spaces have co-opted it and adulterated what actually being truly awoke or woke means. And so I'm woke, you're woke. And so we need to take that back and truly what it means, especially in the economic sense too. Because a lot of people want to talk about socially, but they never want to talk about being woke economically. And I think that's important too.
Definitely. Yep. That's where my, that's where my beef with, who I referred to earlier as woke liberals lies is people who, claim to be woke and then they, are woke on the social issues, but like you said, don't care about economics, maybe because of their own wealth or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what I consider like liberal individualism.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at the CIA's recruitment ads lately, they use a lot of that. They'll be like, "We're really intersectional. Come join the CIA so you can bomb brown people." But
Yeah, I got you. Thank you so much. And also, next question is this is a fun one. Okay. What is one food that Eddie can't live without?
ooh, that is a good one.
Yeah.
Can't live with. I mean, that's got to be chocolate. Any kind of chocolate, every
Okay.
day. Yeah, I cannot live without it. Actually.
Wow. Okay. Nice.
What about you? What's your food?
Don't turn that back on me. See, now you're using your podcaster powers on back on me. You're reflecting it back on me. Damn it. This is actually that is a good question. Damn. Give myself a pat on the back for that one. What is one food I can't live without? Oh man. Fruit. Bro, fruit, pineapples, strawberries, blueberries, apples, oranges, tangerines, grapes, watermelon, kiwis. Bro, like, give me a fruit salad. I'm yours. That's the way it is. Bananas. Well, no, I'm not gonna say that because people in the chat will start encouraging my bad behavior online, and no, I'm not gonna expand on bananas. No, Yipper, I see you in the chat. No, some of us on the left, we can be a little liberal when it comes to our. Anyway, see what happens. See, this is why I had to stay away from certain subjects, but but yeah, fruit for the most part. I just mangoes too.
Mangoes are good. I
Oh,
went to Puerto
dude.
Rico for a while, and they just had mangoes everywhere.
Yeah. By the way, anybody in the chat, if you guys know of any Puerto Ricans, especially leftist Puerto Ricans, that especially like to talk about Puerto Rican independence and things like that, if you guys can get them in contact with me, because I actually want to have some Puerto Ricans on to talk about, and Hawaiians too, to talk about things like land back and things like that. I would love to talk to some native Puerto Ricans as well as native Hawaiians who want to talk about things like that. Just putting that out there to anybody. Clip this if you need to, because I want to talk to them about that. Because imperialism and colonialism is horrible. We need to talk about it. But anyways, bad cookies, no. No bad cookies. Plantains, especially the sweet plantains, those are delicious too. But yeah, just to answer that question, yeah. What is my next question? Oh, what is your favorite curse word?
Huh. I gotta think about which one I use the most. Dang, that's tough.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones out there
too
too.
much. Yeah, there are.
Ron Placone was on last week, and he told me a cuss word in Italian. So I was just like, yeah,
That's good. Yeah, maybe some Spanish curse words. I think puta, doesn't that mean motherfucker?
I
I'll
don't
say that
know,
one's
but
my favorite.
cool, nice. Okay, I like that. Okay, so that's a good one. Now, here's my last question. This one is going to be a deep question, but I really want to get your perspective on this. So you've lived a long life and you're on your deathbed reflecting on your life. What is the one thought you want people to remember about you?
Hmm. That would probably change as um, based on what point of my life I've been in. But right now, um, I would I would say I want people to think that I stood up for what I believed in, because I know what I believe in, and I know what my principles are, and I know that we at the end of the day are fighting for, socialism, which is truly the only way to bring an end to war, poverty, and the maleffects of capitalism.
Sure.
I truly believe class struggle and socialism is the only way to do that. And I know, not everybody will understand socialism the same way understand socialism. So I don't know if everybody, when I die, will say, he was a good person, full stop. But I want them to at least know that I fought for what I believed in, and fought and stood up for my principles, regardless of what people thought of them when I was alive. You know what I mean?
Mm, that's beautiful. Thank you so very much for that.
Thanks for the
Um,
question.
yeah, you're very welcome. Oh, wait, you wanted to talk about a an action that was going on about Bill Gates.
Oh, we got to talk about it a bit. Yeah, I brought it up. It's just his charity in Africa. I recently wrote an article for Midwestern Marks. If people wanted to read more about it,
Hmm.
it's about the so-called Green Revolution in Africa, where he was supposedly bringing them food and productive infrastructure. But they had a summit in Rwanda recently, and they said all Bill Gates really did was debt trap the farmers and poison the soil, make a bunch of money for Western multinationals that he was invested in. So yeah, it's on Midwestern Marks if people want to check that out.
Cool. Thank you so very much. And the link to Midwestern Marks is also in the description as well to their website. If you guys want to go ahead and give that a read, if you're watching this on the rewatch, especially. So what do you have coming up, and where can people find you?
Midwestern Marks pretty much everywhere. On Twitter, we're Marks Midwest. Got our Journal of American Socialist Studies #2 coming up. Got a book eventually coming up. But yeah, right now I'm pretty busy with grad school, so just trying to do streams as much as possible. So Midwestern Marks on YouTube and Twitch. Oh yeah,
Hmm.
MidwesternMarks.com on TikTok.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that's where we're
Okay.
at.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I just want to make sure I share that. You guys have over 77,000 followers on TikTok, which is great. It's like do that education thing, man. You're reaching lots of people so that you can actually educate them on working class issues. So I'm pretty proud of you guys for doing that.
Thank you. I
Mm,
appreciate it. We're doing what we can.
yeah. um and I just want to thank you for doing that. Bad cookies, bad cookies. Will you make a stream in the upcoming future discussing specific fruits, namely bananas? No, no, I'm not. Gosh, because if I do it about bananas, then I have to be fair and do it about peaches too for some friends. Why in the hell did you come on this show? Somebody would have thought I threatened or bribed you to come on here. Like, no, no, no. He's here on his own volition, people.
He offered me bananas.
Nope, I'm not doing it. Okay, so thank you so much for coming on, man. It is always a pleasure to have you, and also I also want to have your comrades from Midwestern Marks on as well, because I want to spread the message as far and wide. And I just want to say this to anybody that's watching. Let me ask you just one more question. What advice would you give to somebody that wants to come into this space as either a content creator on YouTube or a writer or a podcaster or something like that? What advice would you give to them?
I would say be careful about how much you read your comments, and always do the content you want to do that you think is good, because you'll notice pretty quickly, at least if you do it consistently, that there's a difference between the content that goes the most viral and the content that you want to be doing that you think is the most valuable, that educates people the most, in my case. So, I'll then do a mix, every once in a while. I'll do one for, the fans, that one that people will go more viral and bring in new followers. But then most of what I do is just, filming the stuff, me talking about the stuff that I care about, which I didn't do for a while because I was nervous people were going to call me a tanky or whatever else. But it's like, screw it, you'll find your audience. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so very much. I encourage you all to, if you try to get into space, please do so. Sometimes all it takes is a cell phone with a decent internet access, and you guys can put your voice out there. It's better to have, instead of just having 20 voices on YouTube and Rockfin and Twitch and all these other platforms, I'd rather have 2, 3, 400 of us, because if they smash one down, there's still 199 of us left, to be able to put that message out there. So I just want to, put that out there. And Yipper, I knew you were going to say this. I'm not even going to read that. I'm not reading it. I'm not. Nope, I'm not. Nope. No more banana conversation. All right. All right, everybody. Thank you so very much. Also, if you have not liked the stream, please make sure to give this stream a thumbs up. If you're new, please make sure to like the stream. Catch me in about 15 minutes where I'll be on RBN Live. We're going to talk about a lot of different subjects, so it's going to be really good. So make sure to get on there as well. And then make sure to catch Sabby Sabs tonight at 7 p.m. And then also, please make sure to subscribe to Midwestern Marks. They're doing the damn thing. Thank you so much, Eddie Liger Smith, my brother. So good to see you. Everybody, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Forehead kisses to every single one of you, and smoke them if you got them. And bananas. Ha ha! Bananas.